We just want to welcome everyone to News Before It Happens, and we call News Before It Happens because we want to give you news before anything happens to your child or any child in the area. We're so excited to have our special guest here tonight, and I just want to introduce James Billick. We'll start with you, James. You can tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll go to Mayor Foley of Indian River Shores and in Indian River, obviously, and then you can introduce Dan Green.
Hi, I'm James Billig. I am the law enforcement liaison for United Against Child Trafficking, and my mission is to train law enforcement on the latest information as it pertains to child trafficking, so our law enforcement officers can get out there, catch predators, and save children.
Amen. Love that. Mayor Foley.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I'm Brian Foley. I'm the current mayor of Indian River Shores, Florida, in Indian River County. It's my honor to be here today with you and to introduce the only candidate from Indian River County in the newly drawn Florida District 9, Dan Green. I'm sure Dan's going to go into a bit of his own background, but as I was mentioning to the group here earlier, I'm not the easiest person to impress, but there are two people that impress the living daylights out of me, and that's Lynn Barletta and that's Dan Green. And I thought they'd be a perfect match together because knowing Dan's background and his commitment to law and order and to making communities safe, in addition to his intelligence background as a member of our military with a distinguished military record, he has the perfect skill set to take to Washington to push through needed legislation and raise awareness and have adequate funding and support for the eradication of the scourge of child trafficking and human trafficking, which has so many different dimensions. So it's my honor to be here, Lynn. And Dan, thank you for being here as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. We are so honored to meet you, so excited about the things you're doing, the things you already have done, and maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. I hope to live up to your very kind, your kind words. I grew up in Indian River County. I moved here when I was a year old. I've been living here since 1977. My parents still live in the house I grew up in, and I went to Vero Beach High School, and my mom taught there for 25 years, and she taught Spanish, and my father was an engineer, worked at the Harris Corporation in Brevard. So definitely grew up here, long-time resident. Had a chance to go up north for school, knocked out a master's degree at Florida State, and then I was working at the Pentagon in 2001 as a civilian when I was 25, and was there when the plane hit the building. Felt the impact, knew people who were killed and injured.
You got out of the building.
I did.
Obviously.
It's a big building. Strangely enough, a plane can still slam into the building, and you just, it's like a very small sort of series of impacts. You just sort of feel the shock waves. It's just like a small murmur. It's such a large structure. But yeah, I did evacuate, circled around the building just to see what had occurred, saw the strike, crossed the highway and ambled up the underpass that's nearby the Pentagon, just sat there and just sort of took in the whole view.
Oh my.
And just kind of processed that. Eventually, I was able to get home that evening, but I came back to work the next day, September 12th, and the building burned for a number of days after the impact.
I was there.
Even though it's a working building still. But I just couldn't sit in the sidelines. I couldn't let someone else fight in my stead, so I joined the military. I've been in now for 23 years as a Naval Reserve Intelligence Officer, and I've volunteered 5 times for Iraq and Afghanistan, and did 1 year with the State Department in Southern Afghanistan and 4 deployments with the military, 2 to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan. And I was fortunate enough to be attached to 2 SEAL teams for 2 of my deployments. I was in Fallujah with SEAL Team 7 and 10, and then Southern Afghanistan 2012 with SEAL Team 2 and 3. So grateful for that. And then in my reserve career, I was the commanding officer of the intelligence unit at SEAL Team 18, which is a reserve SEAL command in a SEAL unit. And they have non-SEAL units that support SEALs there. So I was in charge of the largest unit in the Navy Reserve community of 135 people. And I'm finishing up my second tour now as a commanding officer. And then along the way, I picked up a PhD at George Washington University in political science. And I've written or co-edited or co-written 5 books about Iraq and Afghanistan, returning war veterans, and China. So a lot of different pieces of parts of my career. And then finally, I was fortunate enough to serve in the Trump administration as well in the first term. So I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy and Force Development. So I was in charge of long-term strategy for the Department of Defense, The office is in charge of the National Defense Strategy. So we take the President's National Security Strategy, and then we interpret that for the Department of Defense, and then provide the guidance to the services on what to invest in, what to not invest in, how to think about war. We commission studies. So it's a small office with great impact, but it's really focused 100% on the China challenge.
Beautiful. And you've received honors for
I have,
your work.
yes. Well, I was a student of the year in 5th grade, if I can, no, I'm joking.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, after that it was all downhill from there, but it was a good moment for a brief while, but I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to go some places and be acknowledged for the work of me and my team, so absolutely. I have a couple of medals from the Department of Defense as a civilian,
Yes.
one from the Army, one from the State Department, and the Navy
Congratulations.
seems to give me a few things along the way too, so grateful for that.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. And one of the things we're here to talk about today is the scourge of child trafficking. And I am so excited about somebody who really wants to do something about that and make it an issue, because I don't see that many people running that are actually putting that at the top of their list, even though it is the fastest growing crime in the world, even though America is the biggest buyer, and even though what's happening online and with the internet is beyond belief. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Mayor Foley, you attended actually a couple of my presentations, I believe. How were you impacted by that, just learning the stats?
Thank you. I attended as many of your presentations as I could, because I learned something new every time. Probably the most consistent and disturbing theme was the not in my backyard. We have a tendency to think that these kinds of problems that are uncomfortable, that make us feel uneasy about our culture and the way minors are treated, the way people are trafficked, happen somewhere else. When you put up, it was very impactful, text messages, and we saw the language and the luring and the baiting that was going on from who knows how old these predators were, and then you disclosed it was in this area. This wasn't the Bronx or central Los Angeles. This was in the Central Florida area. It becomes everybody's problem.
Yes.
And you realize that this is something that, although it may be uncomfortable to think and talk about, it needs resources and it needs awareness.
Yes.
Sunshine is the greatest disinfectant, as I think it was Justice Brandeis that said that. And if we shine a light on this problem, hopefully enough people will be motivated to get to their elected officials.
Yes.
It's a bit above my pay grade. It won't be above Dan's pay grade to have comprehensive federal legislation. Give grants and aid, actually more grants and aid to the states, because there's the Federal Law Enforcement Foundation does give money out, but make this an earmark that needs to be fulfilled. I can't imagine that the public wouldn't be 100% fully behind this. There are just so many layers to the problem that you always brought out, that there's a tendency to think it's too complicated to think about. But it's like an onion. You got to start with the first layer.
That's right.
It impacted me by realizing this is our problem in this community. What do we have? Just recently, not just 6 convictions, but 6 sentencings for related crimes.
That is
in
absolutely
this county.
brilliant. Yes.
Indian River County, the Tony Indian River County.
And congratulations to our state attorney, Thomas Bacadal. Congratulations to Sheriff Flowers. And maybe Jimmy could talk a little bit about the general arrests that have been taking place in the Treasure Coast and the indictments that just happened right here, too.
Yeah, recently we've had 66 indictments and now convictions.
Arrests.
Arrests, yeah. And with that, we understand that a majority of these investigations are instigated by online crimes. That's really where we put a lot of our resources on a national level, to where our ICAC detectives, those are the ones that internet crimes against children, where the value of those resources go into that to catch them in that way. One of our main focuses over the last few months in the development of our Blue Task Force has been to train on the road patrol level. The officers who are actually making the touches, who are making the traffic stops, who are going into homes and having those key identifiers when you go through the police academy and you go through the field training program, you're talking about a year to 18-month program where there's very, very minimal training because there's very minimal resources that are available to them. It's our goal to create those avenues for them, to create that agility for them so they are able to identify it, to bring things to a successful prosecution. And not only just identifying your victim, your suspect, but also on evidence collection, how important it is to gain that collection, because pretty much 90% of these crimes are committed on a cell phone. So to be able to capture those things, the only thing we're trying to do is make life easier for law enforcement and for prosecutors to make sure we bring these people to justice, and then restoration of our victims to make sure that they can start to live somewhat of a normal life after having to go through this trauma.
That's right. And Dan, in coming back to you, how do you see this as an issue and tying it in with some of the other issues that you are really passionate about?
Right. As you mentioned, it's not just a local issue, it's a state, national, and global issue. And often these kinds of human trafficking issues are associated with other types of crimes as well, right? It could be fraud, could be theft, it could be assault. There's all sorts of a constellation of sort of misbehavior that we have to be aware of. So that might just be the opening trigger to discovering all these other crimes that we weren't aware of as well. I think, as we were talking about earlier, the globalization of the economy has definitely created a lot of opportunities for predators, and the ease with which we can communicate has facilitated that as well. Mm-hmm. And just, of course, communication as well as travel is much easier these days and faster. So we have to mimic that type of system to defeat that system, I think. Correct. You have to be global, you have to be nimble, you have to fight it on all of its various levels in the communications. And I think the real challenge, as you know very well from having done it, is you've got all these different layers of law enforcement, as well as child care and churches. They all have to kind of be as integrated as possible.
The foster care system, 60% of all foster care children have been trafficked.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yes.
yeah. And as you know, people are people. There are limitations. People might see something, they may not know what they're seeing.
They don't know.
They don't know necessarily how to share that information. So like, how do you create this vibrant, sort of highly integrated sensing system that can act on it in a decisive way? I think that's the real challenge, and this work is so important.
Thank
and
you.
As much as I can do anything at my level, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, I'm here to be a partner and facilitate those contacts.
We're behind you and excited about what you're doing and excited about your heart to change things. I love all your books. We're going to talk about your books. And I'm very, very glad to see just you all working together to see this come to pass, because the passion behind it to save children is such a driving force. And, Mayor Foley, I've seen you in so many ways just be a force for good in this community. We're all men and women of faith here.
Yes.
And that's the real call that's going on here. And Mayor, you want to talk a little bit about that and just talk about how important you saw Dan's work being.
Yes. When you encounter an individual that is running for office and embodies the ideals that that not only you share, but that you believe are the path of faith and the path that good God-fearing people would want, that's a special moment. And Dan had all of those qualities. I don't mean to embarrass you sitting next to you, but he has all those qualities. And when you have faith, you can move mountains. And yes. when you run into impediments, anybody in politics knows that the easiest day is your first day, because that's the day you don't really have to push anything. The second day, when you think you're going to get something done and you realize how difficult it is, it almost seems like an insurmountable task. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, that's just the way we've always done things, or there's somebody else that does this. If you're not filled with faith, if you're not filled with the belief that this is a mission that needs to be done to protect your fellow man, your fellow trafficked children, you'll probably find it easier to make a splash as a politician doing something else.
Yes.
This is a tough issue, and it takes tough people to do it. And I can't think of a tougher guy than one who's done 4 military tours in Afghanistan and one with the State Department. And Dan and I have not talked about this, but what we all know is that people of faith here have a different viewpoint, a different respect, and a different belief in the quality of human life, including female human life. I don't believe that's the same with the folks in the places we were fighting, and they don't have respect for human life, and they certainly don't have respect for female human life. Preventing education. There's a reason why you keep people downtrodden, and that's so you can subjugate them. It takes a tough person to do that. It takes a person that has the ability to work with law enforcement, and Dan's established some great relationships already during the campaign with some of the leading sheriffs in Florida, and I'm 100% confident the mission will be picked up by him, and he's a winner. He's not a guy that just stops at something. So.
Well, that's the kind of person that we need to have fighting for our children. And, I believe that's God's heart, pounding constantly to save the children. And Jimmy, you and I were talking earlier about how important it is. Yes, we need this technology from the top down. We know that people have been caught just because they traversed Florida cyberspace, and the technology does that, and that's a wonderful thing. But what about from the ground up? You see, we know that from going to conferences and listening to 10 or more survivors who have national voices, that all of them were arrested for their traffickers' crimes, and their trafficker went free. And so to flip this around and change this, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah,
Jimmy?
sure. I mean, I think what's really compelling then is that you're coming from the national space, that you've seen the worst of the worst, right? And my mentality, and one of the things I brought to UACT was, listen, we need to develop a death and defense concept. That is the key to success. I'm constantly using 9/11 as the example. I mean, what's our success rate of breaching cockpits since 9/11? 100%. So we know how to do it, right? We have the tools to know how to do it. We just need to build those rings of safety. And when it comes to these children, where do we start? I mean, we start on a national level. You start with legislation. No, you have to start on the local level. You have to start with that one individual child and build those rings of protection, build that depth and defense around that child, because that's where it all starts. Because if that child is not contacted via cell phone or via relative who's a deviant, then that child's not going to be affected, correct? So it all comes down to the education and the enforcement side of that, and then we work those rings outward. That's why it's so important to have people with your level of expertise working on the local level. That's what's required to make this actually work.
That's so wonderful. And so tell us a little bit more about some of the other issues that you're standing strong on.
Sure, thank you for that. One of there's sort of three main areas we're focusing on in our campaign. Is number one is just making America affordable again. Gas prices are through the roof, grocery prices, property insurance rates, among so many other things. And for me, this is just a kitchen table issue for people just trying to live their lives, get through the day, improve things for their family. And a lot of our focus is going to be on price transparency, creating greater competition, really taking a wire brush to regulations, and getting to the point where we can sunset and retire 2 or 3 regulations for each one that comes out, but really being laser focused on those that affect food prices in particular.
Yes.
That's the thing that's really affecting people. There's a lot you can do, I think, as well to reduce gas prices. Some of that's due to the international market, a little bit beyond my influence, but I can certainly express our concern about it. The second big issue is just protecting the Constitution, restoring sort of good order and discipline to Washington and our processes. We haven't passed the budget on time in over 20, 30 years. We don't really have very effective oversight hearings of bureaucracies to hold them accountable. We're not really rolling back bureaucracy as much as we'd like. I mean, DOJ has been very effective in many of those areas, but there's more to be done there. And then frankly, just focus on being a workhorse, not a show horse. I'm grateful to have the endorsement of 7 members of Congress who are all Iraq-Afghan vets. So I already have sort of battle buddies going up there to work and bring results to our district. I already have friends in different committees that I can call and chat with and meet, and it's a warm, friendly conversation. That's really helpful to us. And then just finally is building peace through strength. Much of my background has been in the military. Our number one national security threat is China. We're dealing with Iran today. Venezuela is an issue, absolutely. But China is the number one national strategic threat to our country. They've been competing with us since 9/11.
Yes.
In their mind, they saw that as a great opportunity for them while we were focused on the Middle East and Central Asia to start really building their military. As much as they may say certain things during diplomatic meetings and political meetings, my one measure I always look at is how many ships are they building? How many battleships? They're building a fleet that's well beyond the needs of just defending their national territory. It's one to seize territory and to defeat us in the region. So that to me that's billions and trillions of dollars of investment, hundreds of thousands of people working on these things. That's the real measure, in my humble opinion, of their focus. And also look at their nuclear weapons inventory. They're growing it exponentially.
Yes.
Yeah, so these are just things that not a lot of people know about, especially on the nuke stuff, but those are the real measures.
Those
Yeah.
are true measurables, and that's something that's just a fact, and so you can prove it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
There's plenty of public resources that you can see in articles that have come out, studies on the nuclear weapons program. And ours is very aged, it's antiquated, needs more resources. It's all about prioritization, but rebuilding peace through strength is not just being able to deter China from militarily being aggressive, but deterrence only works if you can effectively win a war as well. They're both, and also for us in my position at the Pentagon, any conflict will likely be protracted. So how do we build that resiliency within our system so we have enough munitions, that we can mobilize our reserves quickly, and that we can reconstitute battle losses, that our logistical support network is robust enough that we can deliver the beans, bullets, fuel, and everything our men and women need in the region. So these are all there's no shortage of problems in public life, but when it comes to China, there's a lot of great work that the Trump administration is doing. More needs to be done, so I hope to reinforce that when I elect.
Well, and he's not just talking. These are extremely thought out, wonderfully written books. Tell us about
Sure.
this one. We're just
Sure.
going to pass them down and let you talk about
Sure.
each one.
Sure, yeah. This is In the Warlord's Shadows, Special Operations Forces, the Afghans and their fight against the Taliban. I wrote this, I had a chance to serve in one province in Afghanistan, 2 different times, separated by 7 years. So I was there in 05-06 and went back in 2012. And I was there when we sort of had what we thought was peace. The province really fell apart in 2006. The Taliban insurgency came back in really large numbers. In 2007, for example, we had 400 Taliban try to overrun one of our forward operating bases in a district called Kasaruzgan. And so I had a chance to go back 7 years later, and at this time we were applying a program called Village Stability Operations. Instead of being able to commute to combat and leaving, or kicking in a door and leaving, we now had persistent presence. So by doing that, we could then analyze the local terrain, human terrain, realize the frictions and factions, and then start to raise local security forces who would live in their own community and be part-time police to augment full-time police, and then we would build checkpoints. So what it was population protection. So the Taliban couldn't intimidate the population because they were now mobilized. And then we were there in a persistent manner, so local forces felt like we had their back, and that we would fight alongside them. So fought the Taliban holistically, from a security perspective, from an employment perspective. With security, greater economic activity took place. Then you also harnessed local villagers, so the local governance system was more robust. So you had greater community resiliency. So that was the program, and it really crushed the insurgency in so many ways. And so I think only 2 books about it. That's sort of a
So
niche
this
program.
isn't just research. This is, you were there.
I
and
was.
So this is experience and research, which really is impressive. What about this one?
No, that was really effective, Hearts and Minds, right there.
It was. There'll never be a movie about it because it's not exciting. There's no real large explosions, but it's the quiet defeat of an enemy. For example, the Taliban, the highest bounty they would put on the head of a security force person were these Afghan local police. Wasn't an army soldier, wasn't an Afghan national police, because they knew the locals knew the deal.
Because that hit home.
And they were mobilized, and so they couldn't intimidate them, they couldn't bribe them, and they couldn't. Every person we recruited was one less fighter for the Taliban.
Interesting.
Yeah, and this is a book I co-wrote with Bill Mullen. He's deceased, unfortunately, now, but he retired as a 2-star Marine general. Fallujah Redux, the Anbar Awakening, and the struggle with Al-Qaeda. I had a chance to serve in Fallujah in 2007. Interestingly, Governor DeSantis' SEAL team unit he was attached to replaced the one I was there. So we didn't see each other, but we were around the same time. But this is a similar story. So we had the city of Fallujah, which is 10 neighborhoods. In March of 2007, there were 750 security incidents in the city and the surrounding rural countryside. And that's not just small arms fire. That's truck bomb, car bomb, suicide vest, mortar attack, and everything in between. And so what we did is we applied a population protection approach called Operation Alga. Sounds very jargony, but essentially it's the same concepts and principles. Persistent presence, harnessing the local population to defend themselves, and fighting the insurgency holistically with governance, development, as well as local persistent security. So we did a thing called the swarms. We'd swarm one of the 10 neighborhoods of Fallujah every 4 or 3 weeks. We'd essentially use Jersey barriers to separate it from the neighborhood. We would hit all the targets. We'd build a police precinct. So the Iraqis had police there, and our Marines would live with them full time. They had persistent presence. And then we would recruit one local male from every house from a neighborhood watch program. So we bought them really cool blue shirts. We said to the contractor, make sure the letters are 3 inches. Well, we were thinking 3 inches tall, so when we got the shirts, they were 3 inches wide, and it said neighborhood watch about this big, which is great. It's like, well, this is how war happens. But we did this, and we did this over 4 months, and the type of violence changed. They couldn't even muster 20, 25 people to fight us now.
So we need this kind of strategic approach on a grassroots level to put boots on the ground to fight child trafficking. Exactly what you're talking is the same type of strategy that we're approaching this with. So you got technology coming from the bottom, you got grassroots movement, education and restoration coming up from here, and this is what you have to have. That's amazing that you did the same thing to win wars.
Yes, there's a lot of concepts from our experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan that can be repurposed here to not just human trafficking, but also how we fight crime as well.
Yes,
I
could see it.
The things I'm telling you are the things we learned over years of sort of lack of success or failure. We're very good at mowing the grass, which is to say to fight the insurgency, but we weren't very good at addressing the grassroots, which is winning the war.
Yes, and this is providing solutions. All right, what about this one?
Sure. This is the Valley's Edge, a year with the Pashtuns in the heartland of the Taliban. I went to Afghanistan initially in 05-06 with the State Department, and then went back in 09-10. And I worked at the State Department, worked at something called the Provincial Reconstruction Team. So we were there thinking the war was sort of over at the time. So it was focused on good governance, development, and reconstruction. The governor of my province was blind in one eye, illiterate, and he'd been a warlord. He was eventually assassinated in 2011, but he had 5 wives and 32 children. And he was very much a warlord. He would dump dead Taliban bodies in the traffic circle downtown as warnings. And it was very interesting to see human civilization at a very basic level. The province was desert and mountains. Everyone lived along these riverbeds and creeks, but there was not a single blade of grass outside the river area. It was completely just 120, 25 degrees every day. And it was a fascinating world to be in because that province is where Hamid Karzai launched the uprising against the Taliban in the south. So a lot of the people I worked with, including the governor, John Mohammed Khan, had worked with him. So it was kind of an interesting dilemma, interesting problem set. So we were fortunate enough, we built the first girls' school in the province, elementary school. A few years later, we built a girls' high school. I was fortunate enough to be an elections observer there for their parliamentary elections. So we helped get the first woman elected to parliament in the province, which was really great. So it was
learning
fortunate.
all kinds of things. This is wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah, her name was Sonia Nilüfer, and she was fortunate to get elected. But it was a difficult time too because, frankly, the governor, even though he's passed away now, he would assassinate his political opponents. Wow. Right. I mean, you could never fully prove it. But
we kind of see something like that going on, only it's verbal here, and we don't know how much further that's going, but we don't want to be on the precursor of that either.
Yeah, and over the course of my tours, I've probably worked with between 20 and 25 local officials who've been assassinated. Some were killed going home for meetings with me. So, yeah.
Well, my brother is a missionary that there was an attempt he was in Malaysia, and there was an attempt to actually murder the pastors who were all staying in a building, and it was done by the local government. Now that was all orchestrated while this person went out of town he was the mastermind behind it all, and he was coming back the next day. The pastors all got saved. The only thing that happened is their cars got burnt up, and my brother got out of there, but he got into a car accident and was killed on the way back. And so obviously the providence of God was at work there. But that's the kind of thing that we have to start paying attention to in this country, that we don't ever digress to that point, or if it has already happened, we've got to get back to our core values, and we've got to get back to God in this country.
Right, I think that's right. I think when you've spent as much time as I've had trying to build stability in these countries, you really return to America, and I've done 5 deployments. You come back and just in awe of the strength of our system. It also makes you really sensitive to challenges within our government, challenges within our society. It's been a huge increase of people being killed who are involved in politics in our own country. And President Trump, of course.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We don't want to keep going down that road.
And to me, it's a lot about restoring the republic and getting away from these kind of violent indicators. And a lot of that starts with tone and being positive, but also we've got to address the challenges head on.
This is what happened in Rwanda as well.
Right.
All right, so last one, you've already
Sure.
talked about this, so we'll
Sure.
go through this one quickly, but this is
Sure.
probably the most important one. And you can get these on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's called Confronting China, U.S. Defense Policy in an Era of Great Power Competition. I was a co-editor of this. This was written by 8 or 9 of my colleagues who worked with me at the Pentagon. And we'd worked tirelessly on the China problem set. We wanted to tee up the next Trump administration for ideas on how to think through the challenge. I wrote the chapter on strategy. So we have regional and functional areas. And it's really talking about, hey, China's the #1 national security threat. Here's what we have learned and what they're trying to do, what our policies try to implement, what we need to do to make the things better. The long story short is China has something called the China Dream, where they believe they can supplant us in the Pacific and eventually supplant us in the globe. They have a lot of strengths, but they have a ton of weaknesses as well. One of our great strengths is we have a lot of allies and partners. People like our country. Many people love our country.
More like us outside of our country than inside our country, I think, sometimes.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. You know, in China being a dictatorship, they have certain advantages. They can focus on a problem set regardless of popular opinion. We have to be sensitive to that. But they have tons of corruption issues. So, for example, there's a rocket force right across the way from Taiwan. That particular commander of that rocket force sold most of the rocket fuel on the black market and replaced it with water. So the rockets were completely ineffective.
Oh, my goodness.
But they have a lot of corruption issues. They have no free press. They have no competitive party system. They've tried to learn some lessons from the fall of the Soviet Union. They've tried to get after corruption. They've tried to make sure the political elites have control of their security forces. They have political commissars within their military, and they also pit different military and security organs against each other so that they can't have a coup come about, among a number of other little features of their system.
Well, I can't wait to have your expertise. We'll definitely be praying for you, but your expertise to apply to, as I said earlier, the fastest growing crime in the world, which is child trafficking. And, you know, there were, according to Kash Patel, 7,000 children have been rescued in just 1 year to date.
Wow.
And there are so many more that we need to go after. And Mayor Foley, is there anything that you'd like to say and wrap up, and then I'll give it to Jimmy, and then...
Sure. Just 2 quick observations. There's so much to digest here, but we also should not overlook the relationship between trafficking and criminal illegal epidemic. I mean, we let so many people into this country, and look at the difficulty we're having deporting the worst of the worst. So we need people to double down, support President Trump in that initiative. And for the life of me, I can't imagine how anybody could advocate for keeping somebody on the soil that's a convicted child rapist, convicted child molester, just for them to, walk the streets and do it again. We've got to, pray for our president and pray for our members of Congress who are steadfast in doing that. And then the other observation is, in sitting here, I always like to walk away. I feel very uplifted whenever I talk to you, Lynn, and whenever I talk to Dan. And that's not an acquired skill. It comes from the heart, and it comes from the passion for an issue. But there was another presentation you gave to a packed house here in Indian River Shores in our town center, and you inspired the crowd so much. You got us all to chant in unison, not on our watch.
That's right.
And if you listen carefully to Jimmy and you listen carefully to Dan, in their each in their unique way, they're saying not on our watch. And it started with him, when he made the decision, nobody else was going to fight his fight. He was inspired in 9/11 to go and do it. Jimmy has given, intellectual strategy to how we do this that is just, brilliant. It's a blueprint. So let's take that blueprint and put it out there and let's make it work.
Yes.
And let's everybody say, not on our watch.
Amen to that, and we're going to say that at the end all together.
Okay.
Jimmy, do you have anything? Oh,
Sure.
I was just thinking about one more thing that you said, and that is, I believe that as we unify, there's one thing that could possibly unify this country. Guess what it is? Children.
Yeah.
Who could not agree that rescuing our children, saving our children from this devastating scourge of child trafficking is not worth fighting for, and maybe worth crossing lines so that we could get that fight going on both sides? Jimmy?
I don't know about you, Mr. Mayor, but I'm feeling a little unworthy sitting on the same couch as this man after listening to everything. Truly amazing. What a gift from God to for your community to have someone with this experience
Yes.
and this asset
Yes.
to lead you. What a blessing you have here in Indian River for this opportunity. I really look forward to working with you. I think we can do some great things together. I'm actually very excited about the opportunity to work with Indian River Shores also as a pilot location after speaking with you. I think that we can do some great things up here in Indian River, and then obviously across the 19th, the state, and then the rest of the country. But meeting the two of you has been a wonderful thing for me this morning, and I'm really appreciative, Lynn, of you introducing me to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your
Thank
service,
you,
sir,
Mayor
and
Foley.
all you've
Thank
done.
you.
Put this
For the
together.
record,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so on the count of three, we're all going to say not on our watch with our audience. Hopefully you'll say it too, and you'll establish that perimeter in your neighborhood, in your city, in your state, and your country. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Not on our watch. Thank you.